I'm glad to be here. I know nothing about OSH, okay, so I'm a data guy. I will not pretend I know anything about it. So I will be talking about data and try to give you a perspective of what's going on and how it could eventually change your life. Okay, this is data about me. So how many people in the room are on LinkedIn? Okay, all of you. So you can all get this picture. It maps all your personal contacts. In LinkedIn, I have more than 1,000, so it struggles a little bit. And then it clusters them, and it actually builds a story of your life. Okay. I've been in academia at the beginning. Then I moved to open source after doing stuff in object orientation, blah, blah, blah. I worked on mobile application, and now I'm working on data. And it clusters all these people, and you can find them all. This is data. Of course, it means that a foreign power has a lot of information about me and about all of us. We should be a concern to all of us, by the way. Okay, so this is my first piece of data. This is data about data. Okay, so I plotted, so this is Google Trend, which I assume most of you know, but we never use it enough to try to understand what's going on, and this is data about what people think, right? Remember, Twitter knows what we say, Facebook knows what we do, LinkedIn knows who we are, Twitter knows what we think, right? Because each time you look for something, you're thinking. Okay, so I plotted open data, big data, data viz, and data journalism, okay? So it shows that open data, which is the blue line, is kind of stable. And then big data exploded in 2011, okay? So if you're looking for money, you should put big data all over your grant proposals and stuff like that. It shows that data visualization is not so big, and data journalism is actually kind of flat and small, okay? That doesn't mean it's not important. That means it's the perception of the people and so on. So I'll be talking about data in general. If you plot data against all these curves, they all disappear and become to zero. Okay, so let me start with a few examples of data sets. The thing on the right there is a parking lot. This is a satellite picture of a parking lot. The things on the parking lots are cars. The thing on the left, this big building, is a Walmart store. So there's a company taking satellite picture every day of all the Walmart parking lots, counting the number of cars on those parking lots. And by seeing the evolution of those number of cars, they can deduct the evolution of the number of people in the store and make prediction on the actual revenue, incoming revenue of Walmart. And they sell this to financial institutions that are following the Walmart stock. Okay? Now, this is data collection and use in a fairly smart way. This data set is worth about $200K a year. Okay? So that tells you the stuff. So here's a different one. Once again, this is on Google search statistics. So the blue line is the unemployment rate in the US. And the gray line is the Google searches for unemployment benefits. Okay, they match perfectly, right? The interesting thing is the gray line is 3 weeks ahead of the blue line. It's known 3 weeks before, which means that Google has more precise information that the Department of Employment in the US, and 3 weeks ahead. Okay, once again, because Google knows what we think, and there's no mystery there. If you know you're going to be fired, you just look up what your employment benefits are going to be. Okay. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about open data and just keep, so open data is the the idea of availability of public sector information, PSI, for access and reuse by individual and organization. Let me take this sentence and parse it a little bit. Okay, so PSI, which means data that is subjected to the open data general rule, is the data that's collected, produced, maintained, and used by public organization in the normal use of their business, okay? So it's not new data they're supposed to put out. It's the data they have every day, okay? So when I see people resisting open data by saying, you know, it's difficult, I don't have the data. Yes, you have the data. I just want to see the data you use, okay? Okay, the second thing is access versus reuse. Access is the idea that that you should tell people what's going on, okay? Which means you have data which is valuable. Just show it to me so that I understand what's going on. So the issue is transparency, and the issue is providing access to individual citizens so that they have an understanding of what the hell is going on. And it's one reasonable way of bridging the gap between the citizen and government organization that we see growing bigger as we move forward. Okay, reuse is a different concept. It's the idea that this data should be put into a format that is usable by machine so that some people, businesses, can build applications or make them make technical use of this data to either run their business better or run new businesses. So, and there we're addressing two different populations. One is the citizen, and there this is the notion of transparency. I want to know what the hell is going on. And the other one is businesses, which means people who are going to be smart enough to either make use of this new information to run their business better, or to invent new businesses that will make sense to people. Okay. Okay, so the key drivers, five of them. The first one is the typical Anglo-Saxon vision of the world, which is what's been financed by the vision of the world, the state being this kind of goddish organism up there. The second thing is, the second driven thing is government transparency. And I think that's one of the powerful driver, and that's the one a lot of people understand. A few people had the idea that this is worth money, okay? So, and most governments right now are broke. So maybe, you know, I could sell this data, which is a terrible idea, which some people have, okay? Okay, the fourth thing is that it can be used to create new economic value, and I'll come to that and address a little bit. And the last thing is this data can be used to make all our lives better, okay, which is a little bit the same as number 4, but slightly different also. Okay, then we come to the protection of privacy. So some of this data contains names of people or data about private life and so on. So we live a different life. In France, we have 2 laws. One Informatique and Liberté, which is about protecting private citizens against the bad guys who built data files on them, and a different law which is La loi CADA, which is on providing access to information. Those two things collapse with each other, okay? They both in France date to 1978, which is kind of old. And we're fighting this fact that in the European world, the emphasis is put on privacy. Let's protect our private lives, even though we have picture of us naked on Facebook. And the second thing is that in the US, the focus is put on transparency, okay? And of course, business-wise, they're right. Now we have to put our philosophy or our vision of a man where we want. But basically, because they have this emphasis on transparency rather than on privacy, they're getting ahead of us, okay? And of course, because they have all these multinationals that hold data about us that we don't have, but that's a different topic. I run a startup named Data Publica. I wake up in the morning to make it work. I go to bed at night to make it work. So in between, I focus on making it work. So you will not avoid the 2-minute advertisement about ad on what we do, which is also symptomatic of what's going on in that space. So we are kind of data hunters. We look for data for people who ask for it. So we do it 2 ways. Either people come to us and say, I'm looking for such and such data, could you find it for us? Or we do it because we pre-built off-the-shelf data which we sell to people. Okay? So people come to us and specify the type of data they're looking for. And we go through this first phase, which is a kind of a detective story approach. Where the hell do I find this data? Okay? We find the data on the web. We find it in open data portals. We find it in the internal data of our customers, which is usually in terrible shapes. We find it from people who sell data, and we find it on social network. So we grab data from all over there. So we have these processes to automatically extract data from these sources. We do things such as scraping, crawling, ETL, blah, blah, blah. So weird stuff. We aspire data you could never dream of. Okay. Next we've extracted this data. We're going to structure it. So we need to deduplicate, to extract the meaning, do text mining, and so on. And then we have the data, and we deliver it to the customer on a subscription basis, because most of the time, people don't want a picture, they want a movie. They want to know what's going on. So this is our job. Let me give you a few examples of what we can do. We have the data set of all the public tender announcement in France, 2,000 a day, 8,000 sources. Okay, so you have to find the 8,000 sources, identify them, extract automatically, structure the stuff, deduplicate, and deliver. We have the file of the 175,000 French public organization. I was desperate when I discovered this number. We have data about the economic activity. We have an economic dashboard of the 36,000 cities in France. We have all the prices of all the hotels in France for every day based on every reservation date. Okay, so you can grab this data. We have stores opening hours. We have the geolocalization of all the electric charge stations in France and very soon in Europe. We have the list of all elected officials and so on. So you can get all that stuff. I'm sure you guys have a need for OSH data, and I could find it for you. Okay, so let me try to end with what can we do with all this data? Okay, so there was this dream that open data was going to solve this and that big data was going to do this and that. Let me address the issue of once you have the data, what you do with it. So the first one, here is an example of an app on a mobile phone, which is Fix My Street. So you walk down the street and there's a pothole in the street. So you use geolocalization on your application and you signal it to the city, and then they put it up there, and then they're going to fix it. Once they fix it, they tell you blah, blah, blah. Okay? So there was this dream that all these apps were going to change our lives. I do not underestimate the importance of doing such things. They're kind of cute and they're kind of nice. Some of them simplify your life and so on. But that's not the great future. And so this is useful for the citizen. There is no business to be built there. Okay. So all the startups and so on that went after this market use open data to build a citizen-based application in your city. Are kind of disappointed because they suddenly did not become rich. Okay, well, c'est la vie. So that's good. This will go on. It's a good way of using this data, but that's not the most important thing. The second thing is data journalism, and I think somebody else is going to speak of that. So we use data journalism at Data Publica essentially as a communication tool. It's fairly simple. It's not very expensive. Basically, you have to grab some interesting data, extract some interesting fact, and publish it. So here is one example of what we did. We scraped all the information on the localization of retail stores in Paris. So this data is not available. We had to find it and grab it. Then the second thing is we plotted it on a map, and then you look at places where there is a state of monopoly in special area, and then you can write stuff about it. Okay? Of course, we would have to correlate that to prices. We couldn't do it because it was too expensive, but that's interesting. Grab data, extract some fun information on it, and publish it, and then raise the number of page views. Okay, I think the real issue is elsewhere. Okay, this data can be used for major issues. So let me give you 3 examples. The first one is I think in 2003 there was a heat wave in Paris in August, and old people started dying. Okay, they just died. I can't remember what the final number is, 20,000 extra deaths or something like that. And so people knew there was something going on, okay? So they started talking about it. They interviewed the Ministry of Health, who was shot with on the Riviera, I mean, a disastrous communication story, and said, there's no problem, everything is fine. And so he stayed on the Riviera, and then, eventually, they found there was a real problem. He got fired, poor guy. So what happened there? What happened was a simple story. The data was not available. Where was the data? Essentially, the story is the death numbers are provided by the funeral homes and not by the morgues nor by the hospitals. Okay? And there's basically a 1-month delay between the death and the death communication data. Okay? So the open data stuff or the data organization consists of build the path for the data so that we know when the old people are dying so that we can do something about it. Okay? So the data was available. In 2009, I think, there was a snowstorm on Paris, which was focused on the south of Paris, and essentially blocked the entire traffic in the south of Paris on Highway 86, and people just came to a standstill. Okay, and they all had to leave their car and move to a mall and spend the night there or something like that. There again, and what did the Ministry of Interior, what did the police do? Well, they sent a few cars with wow, 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 and nothing happened. All these people got stuck. There again, all the information was available. Okay, we know the weather, we know the traffic, all the data is there. So we could essentially plot all that stuff to make it work. That's once again. And then the last one is my favorite pet project. Okay, it's about food. Here is the statistics. In the United States, 45% of the fruits and vegetables produced by the system reach the plate of the consumer. 45%. This means that 55% goes to garbage or is lost somewhere. In Europe, we're much, much better. 55% of the fruit and vegetable reach them. Okay, so there you have a fairly large and complex system with producers, distributors, logistics, etc., with information and data. And the idea of optimizing this system so that we could move maybe from 55 to 58%, which would save billions of euros, is a great one and has to be based on data. Okay, so this is what data is all about, to solve the complex problem of the complex and difficult to solve organism of the complex societies we built. Thank you.